All right, everyone, welcome back. Episode 7 of the Service Business Audit. Today we have on an awesome guest, Jacques Bastien over here. Jacques, thank you for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
Of course. So me and Jacques, I think we should start almost where it all began. We actually go way back to about a year and a few months ago, right?
Maybe a year and a month, something like that?
Yeah, a year and a month was our first meeting. And Jacques was the first person to ever pay me for a consultation call. And I was the first person he ever spoke to in the cleaning industry. Jacques.
I'm
sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, so I mean, at this point, I've been running different companies over the last couple of years, and we're now in the Airbnb space at the time, right? And so we're running Airbnb properties, and then we realized that cleaning is our biggest expense line item. So we decided to start a cleaning business. And so I decided to start, and in a Facebook group I was in, saw Max, and I saw the things you were posting, and I just reached out, hey, man, I'd love to pay you for your time, ask a couple questions. And that obviously is full circle because we're coming back to this conversation now, but that conversation was, a lot of the ways that we run our business today came from a lot of things you taught me from that conversation. So, yeah.
I'm glad it was helpful. I think that's a great place to start where it all began. And that was a year and a month ago now. And now, Jacques, if you don't mind telling the people listening, how much revenue are you currently doing with your business per month?
Right now, we're between 25 to 30K a month, just about.
Awesome. I think that's great growth for a year. So talk me through when you first started the cleaning business, because I think that's where a lot of people who are listening are probably either on their beginning stages, maybe 3-4 months into the cleaning business. What was your biggest, struggle in the very beginning when you were first starting?
I think it's probably the same one that a lot of people struggle with. I will say I came to this industry with 16 years of entrepreneurship experience. So there are a couple things that were easier for me than others. For example, for my other companies, we have a full-time web developer, so we were able to create a beautiful website from the very beginning. We understand marketing, so we were able to get marketing up and running. And we had some financial resources where we can invest in marketing as well, which, again, some people may not necessarily have the privilege to do. But where we struggled the most was actually getting cleaners, primarily reliable cleaners. Like I think the first month, when we started out, we started with the Airbnb cleaners. I used to clean our properties. We asked them to be our independent contractors. But when we started getting some growth and we had to recruit new people, that's when things started falling apart. That's when we had to turn off the ads and say, look, let's take a beat. Let's refigure this out, and it will come back into it. Yeah.
And what was the issue? I'm assuming it wasn't finding cleaners. It was finding high quality, skilled, reliable cleaners. That was the issue?
Yeah. Ironically, though, that was the trigger that says, I need to reach out to somebody who's been doing this. And that's when you came up. So when we initially started having our conversation, this was probably like month 1 to 1.5 in the business. And the issue we ran into, we had hired a couple people, but they either the rate we were offering them wasn't enough, right? Or the rate was enough, but the cleaning wasn't good, and we didn't know how to actually gauge how good they were. It's not like we were cleaners ourselves. So there was just some confusion around that. Prior to that, the independent contractors I've hired in my life were like creatives, designers, developers, etc., where you can kind of see the quality of what they do. But in the cleaning space, how do you gauge how good somebody is if you don't even know how to decide if something's good? And so that's what initially led to the conversation that we had.
Yeah. And it's different too, right? Because you're not at the property after every job to see how it went. Like when you're hiring a web developer freelancer, you get to see the website before you send it out to the client or whatever that is. So it's exactly difficult to do quality assurance when you're not necessarily at the job. What would you say was the most important thing? I know this was a while ago. I don't remember all the details on our call. What would you say was the most important thing from that call we had together a year ago?
Mm-hmm. Ironically, I do remember that call. I do because I'm a systems guy. So immediately I took that call and said, okay, how do I turn this into SOPs and systems for my team? And I've since created a few different documentation that came from that call. If I were to think about maybe the top 3 things that we got, right, the top things, Thing number one was, at the time, I've had different VAs from different places in my other businesses. I've been in the Philippines. We've had team retreats in the Philippines, so we have team members there. We have team members in Venezuela for other companies. But at the time, I actually had one of my Filipino VAs helping me with the cleaning business in the beginning. But one of the things you mentioned was having a Latin American VA because of the time zone. And also because of just the familiarity in just the accent, right? Like, it's an accent that we're all familiar with. And so that was the first one, right? That stood out to me. The second one was, I was asking you a couple questions about working with VAs and language barriers. We got, I'm sorry, not VAs, cleaners. So we got a couple of cleaner inquiries or folks who are interested, but they didn't speak great English. Maybe they spoke Spanish or Portuguese. And so the next thing you kind of affirmed for me was, that's something you also do. And because you have office staff that is bilingual, you're able to manage that because the cleaner can just speak with the client, vice versa. And so, and you have some clients who prefer English-speaking cleaners. Then you also have clients who it doesn't matter to them. And so that's, if it was a limiting belief, you helped me unlock it by showing me that you run your business doing it this very same way that I thought was not possible. So I would say those are probably the main top two. But at the same time, too, man, there are so many other little tiny things that are probably not a big deal to most. But just that time we had together and the questions I was able to ask just helped me probably save weeks or months of learning by experience or research where you just said, nah, man, don't even waste your time doing this and doing that. Yeah.
Yeah, I think those calls are important. I do the same too. When I find someone, or if I'm trying to expand into like commercial markets and I'm not too experienced in commercial, whatever that is, I always try to find someone I can at least speak to for 30 minutes to an hour. I actually recently booked a call off of Intro, which is, I don't know if you've heard of it, but it's a platform you could speak to famous CEOs and people who've exited billion-dollar companies, and it's like $300 for 30 minutes. But I think it's worth it because it's not necessarily that a lot of times they're giving you information that you don't know, but like you said, it's just unlocking like limiting beliefs or avoiding the doubt. A lot of times you know certain things, but you don't take action on it because you're not sure if it's going to work, or you don't know what the repercussions of that would be.
Yeah, exactly.
I think we should talk about, to the audience, I know you've been working with some cleaning business owners about systems and systemizing their business. I'd love to hear about the best systems you created, and I know that your main goal with these systems is to kind of take you out of the business while allowing the business to continuously grow. What would you say are the first things you look at when you're assessing a cleaning business and how you could effectively install systems into it?
Yeah, amazing question. I think, so a couple of things, right? Any kind of business, especially a service business, the first thing I would say is naturally you want to remove yourself from doing the actual service, which is kind of the kind of cleaning company 101, right? Where you hire either W-2 or 1099 to do the cleaning for you. So that's the first step, naturally putting you in the place of being a project manager of that business. Then the goal is to keep going further. I think one mistake that a lot of folks make is that they hire VAs at that point. And I know this because I've been guilty of it, and a lot of us probably still do it today. We hire a team member to come in and do work, but we don't have systems that exist for them to actually know how to do their work. And so as a result, they're highly reliant on you, calling you every single second, getting decisions from you. And so then you're like, this is not working. But in actuality, having the right systems in place can significantly change how that team member can perform. And so the way that I approach it is I have this framework called SEED, S-E-A-D, which is the right order to remove yourself from a business, which is start by systemizing the business, then eliminating, which means simplify. What can you remove? What can you reduce, right? Here's another one, side note. The third thing you told me that was huge was about walkthroughs. And this actually happened after our call. I think I reached out to you and asked you some questions about walkthroughs. And the reason this came up was because in an elimination stage, if you think of a cleaning business, walkthrough was something we eliminated, a physical walkthrough, right? In the process of elimination. So, but what you had said to me was sometimes you ask the clients on the phone, rate their home from 1 through 10, and then you also say sometimes you ask for pictures, right? You kind of just said it like in passing. But that is like the basis of how we run our business, and it's like significantly systemized, even more than what you told me. But now, as someone's booking a clean, they have to indicate right at the cleaning stage their condition, and as they select options, it actually adjusts the price live. We can get into that later, but just another thing that just hit me was about your approach to a walkthrough without actually doing a walkthrough. So, but anyways, eliminate is the process of figuring out what can we do without while this business can still continue to run, right? Cleaning things up, simplifying things, and then after that is automation. What are the things we can automate via software, via automation like Zapier, Make, etc., or via AI, to allow you to run this thing without you having to do it. And then finally, whatever is left is what you delegate to a team member. And so that's how I approach systemizing a business. And normally when I'm going through it, I focus on a business function at a time. And so the first thing I try to remove myself is from customer fulfillment. So in the case of the day-to-day of the work that the client is doing, the first thing I do is I say, well, how do we systemize customer fulfillment? Naturally, what I do is I create a flow chart of what our customer journey looks like from when the client is booked. Meaning, once they're booked, we probably send them a welcome email. We probably assign a cleaner, right? Then after that, in our case, after we assign a cleaner, then we do we call it our concierge message, which is us reaching out to them and say, hey, we want to make sure your clean we want to make sure we bring the right equipment to your place. So can you send us a few pictures so we can gauge the condition? And that's what we also use to determine. Actually, you indicated that this was a stage 2, but this is actually a stage 4. That's which is something that was inspired by you, right? So, but we send our concierge message.
And that's to everyone? That's to every client?
Every single client gets it. We have 3 different scripts based on what kind of clean it is. If it's move, deep, whatever, we ask for specific things. So if it's a move clean, we may say, send us a picture, and we'll say, we'd love to see a bathroom or this or this or that. If it's a deep clean, the script changes slightly. And when we don't send it is if it's a recurring clean. So if it's like a bi-weekly or weekly or something, we don't really send that to those folks. But any new customer or one-time booking is when we send that message. And where that exists, it's all housed in one Google Sheet that my team has access to. So if they ever forget, like, what's that thing we say? Just go to the Google Sheet, copy and paste it, drop it in. And so that's the process that we go through. So once we finish systemizing the customer fulfillment, which is once that's done in the clean data, some specific things we do, we map it out, and then I just create documents for each of those stages. A documentation, not a full 50,000 page SOP, right? Just like a simple checklist, here's a quick little how-to guide for what you need for this particular stage. Like for the concierge, here's one little page that just tells you the 3 scripts based on what cleaning they're asking. For the cleaner part, where you connecting cleaner to the clean, these are the pricing guide for what we offer the cleaners. Very simple, right? Which is, I think, another thing that folks get wrong with SOPs. The more complicated it is, the longer it is, the less chance it's actually going to get used. So we focus on creating very simple, basic checklists. You know what I mean? Like that's And so that's the process we go through. And with that, especially getting that customer fulfillment out of your plate, that's already 60% of your day to day. If you could get somebody else to a VA to do it, but you also give them the resources they need. Then you can focus on marketing and hiring, which you could eventually systemize those as well.
I love that formula. I think my favorite part of that is going to shock people. It's just the elimination part, because a lot of people have just too many steps. I've been guilty of this myself, but when you have too many steps, you're right. It's just less likely that all the steps get completed. Elon Musk has something similar. I forgot what he said, but he said something about the importance of just deleting certain steps to simplify processes. And I think that's huge. So another thing I want to touch up on is like virtual assistants. A lot of people probably have systems for themselves, but it's very difficult to almost get those systems out of your head to pass them on to a virtual assistant. Have you struggled with that at all in this process, in the sense that, like, yes, there's systems, but now we got to get these systems out of here into some sort of document, for the VA to be able to follow?
Yeah, so I personally don't anymore. I used to in the past. I don't anymore. But it's because I've been doing this for a little while now, right? 17 years of business. So I've learned a thing or two over the years, but when it comes to someone maybe who's a bit more newer, this is why I start things with a flow chart that I explain to them, right? And maybe we can attach like a screenshot of what that looks like. But ultimately, if I could visualize it for you in words, it's essentially, think of a box, right? Just a box. And you put the number 1 inside of the box, and you put what is the first thing that happens during that particular business function. So let's say in our businesses, we're going to break it down to customer acquisition. That's a function, right? We're going to break it down to recruitment. That's a function. And we're going to break it down to fulfillment. That's a function.
Yeah.
So whichever one of those you want to work with, right? Let's go to the marketing, for example. Before you do any systemizing, just start there. Just put a box, like a rectangle, and what is the first thing that happens once somebody becomes a lead, right? And there's a whole prerequisite on how do you get leads. That's a whole different conversation. But when somebody becomes a lead, what happens for you, right? Either A, they call in, or B, they fill out a form online. So you have 2 different pathways now. Then what happens? Maybe if they call, you try to close them. That's a step, right? But if they fill out a quote, maybe you reach out. Did they respond? So all the different things I'm saying, you essentially map them out on paper just so you can kind of get a bird's eye view of it and see it. Once you have it mapped out from beginning to end, that's when you say, okay, now what are the points of these that have a lot of friction? For example, you may say, if we go back to the fulfillment side, I was saying, the next stage we assign cleaners, but we have a lot of friction here. Like cleaners are saying no, so then you figure out what are some solutions you can come up with. And it's actually useful if you have business partners or even VAs already that you can go through that process with. That way, they can help answer those questions, right? And so going about it that way, you don't have to be a genius. You just follow the process to help you just solve these situations, right? And so by doing that, you figure out, okay, what are some things that we can eliminate? What things can we even add? Because there may be a need to add. Like in between us assigning cleaners and the day of the cleaning, we didn't have concierge message there. But we've added that because there is a friction point where we realized that when the cleaners got to the house condition was not consistent. They're like, I budgeted 4 hours for this. This is going to be 12 hours. And so how do we resolve that? Okay, we got to add a step in between. But you do all that on we're talking about a sheet of paper, an iPad, or a board, and you're just collaborating with your team. Once you finish it, then the question you ask yourself is, each of these steps, what does the team need? If somebody else had to do this, what do they need? Not like necessarily a step-by-step walkthrough, but what would they need for them to do this, right? In your case, let's say you were systemizing this podcast, right? You may say, okay, once you sit down on this chair and you're talking with your guests, what are the questions that an interviewer would need so that they can get through with this podcast?
Yep.
And so you write down the list of 10 questions that, give or take, has to be asked. Maybe I may answer question 5, so you may mentally scratch that off. I'm not going to ask them that again, right? But that's how you systemize something like this, is you reduce it to you as somebody who's great at conversation. You may be able to read the conversation and know, I know what to ask next. But when you're systemizing it, you want to plan it for even the person who is not the greatest at conversations. These are the questions you need to ask. That way they don't got to think. They just need to make sure that they're listening to see if questions were answered already, right? And it's kind of the same thing where you're providing resources to your team. But it's definitely not easy, but it is simple. It's not easy, though, but it's rather simple once you follow through it that way.
So for anyone listening, by the way, I'm going to convince Jacques to send me as many resources as he can, and I'm going to put them in the description below, if that's all right with you, Jacques. You just maybe the flow chart, whatever definitely. You feel comfortable sharing, we'll attach it below into a Google Doc. And then if you want more help with systems, so reach out to Jacques. He'll help you out with your cleaning business. But Jacques, so you've gotten really good at systems over time. You've gotten really good at lead gen. Let's talk a little bit more about lead gen. Before we get into different strategies, I do have a question for you. What would you say is your favorite call to action on a website? Because I go back and forth with having a booking form versus a contact us form. Personally, I'm a fan of a contact us form because I do think a lot of people are price shopping with a booking form. And if you don't have like a multi-service booking form, multi-page booking form where they're going to fill out first name, last name, email, and then they get access to the beds and baths, I think you get a lot of price shoppers. What's your favorite call to action on a website?
Yeah, that's a great question too. When we first started out, we were doing LSA for the first, I want to say 2 to 3 months. So it almost kind of didn't matter, right? Because we were just, people were just calling us directly, right? So then I realized that my customer acquisition cost was about 180 to 220. That's how much it was costing me. I'm in Tampa, $60+ a lead. I'm closing 30% if I'm lucky, right? And because we weren't the cheapest price company out there either, so we just were not getting a lot of yeses. So we started exploring to other platforms, and I'm going to get to the answer in the question. So, but the next thing I went to was Google PPC to be exact, and spent $1,000. I didn't get one lead, one sale, one client, one anything. But it's because I put the website up and I didn't put anything in between the booking form. So essentially, I was just pushing traffic straight to the booking form, thinking someone's gonna just book it directly, right? And so that's when I had to think about, okay, how do we resolve this situation, right? We then switched to Facebook, but similar idea where we send them to a website and they fill out a form. But what we end up deciding to do, to answer the question of favorite CTA, my preference and what has worked really well for me, because one important stat to know about my business, 90 to 95% of our bookings come via text message. Meaning 90 to 95 of our bookings come from people we have never spoken with on the phone, like not a word. So most phone call conversations happen when maybe like, let's say a cleaner's lost, like we're calling, hey, what's the thing? Or the team's outside, can you go and look? But we have clients right now who's been with us for months and we don't even know what their voice sounds like because most of the conversations happen via text. And I wanted to optimize for that. Yeah, you had a question you're gonna throw in there.
So the initial booking, you closed them via text message.
Everything, yeah. So
Why is that?
And I wanted to optimize for that. So I'll break it down, right? A couple of things worth mentioning, right? When we first started the cleaning business, one of the decisions that myself and my wife made was that the goal is not just to build a cleaning business. I think if the goal is to build a cleaning business where we're in there hustling every day, we could have been at $80K a month if we wanted to, right? But the goal was, how do we build a cleaning business from the very beginning that relies as little as possible on us being physically there? And so with the 25 to 30K I'm mentioning, this is with us very, very, very hands-off. We're talking about 90% of the business runs without us, right? And where we come in is like the big decisions or new things that we haven't dealt with before. And then as soon as we resolve that thing, we create a system or an SOP or something so that it doesn't need us the next time it comes around, right? And so with that said, keeping that in mind, a lot of the decisions we made were based on how do we do this that doesn't rely on us. And so we decided we wanted to optimize the business to run via text primarily versus via phone calls. At this time, though, we were running LSA and we were getting the closing rate we were getting, then we also had some leads coming in that we text. And whenever we called folks, they didn't respond. But when we text them immediately, they were faster to respond. Mm-hmm. We did this and tested this, and so we ended up realizing that 90% of people weren't picking up our phone calls. And so we said, okay, might as well just have a text conversation. It didn't always start out that way, but that's how it ended up being. So to get back to the point we were saying about the CTA and the forms, so based on wanting to optimize for that, we built our form where on our website, we have a couple of actual CTAs. There's a book now, there's a view quote, there's a view pricing. We actually put all three in there intentionally. That way, if book now didn't do it for you, right below that, there's another CTA that says get a quote. If that didn't work for you, there's a CTA that says view pricing. But they all do the same thing. Mm-hmm. When you click it, a modal pops up that basically says, hey, I want to ask you for your information. What we decided to do was, and I got this idea from care.com. I went there, I was looking at something and I saw their website, and their form, it starts with like, what's your zip code? And then the next page on the pop-up was like, what's your name? And I was like, this is kind of cool because once you're filling this out thinking I'm just trying to get a quote, the last page says, okay, what's your name and number so I can send this to you. But at this point, the foot in the door technique, you've already committed to putting so much information down. You're like, I might as well just put my name and number and get this information. And so as a result, we did it that way. So on our page, it doesn't look like just a simple form where everything is in. It just starts by saying, let's just see if we serve your area. What's your zip code? Put it in. Next scene says what kind of cleaning you're looking for. Deep, move, whatever. The next page says, okay, how many bedrooms? Slider. How many bathroom, right? And so once they do that, now what happens is, as soon as they click get quote, it flips over to our page and actually gives them our interactive booking form that they can actually see the pricing and everything. All of that happens. They can see it. They can, what if it was for, they can mess with it and they can leave if they want to, because obviously people who are price shopping, that's what they tend to do. But at the same time, that in-between stage, we now have their contact information. And so as soon as that happens, about a minute later, they get a text message that says, which is what a lot of folks' text messages don't say. Most people say, hey, this is such and such. When's a good time to give you a call or something like that? Ours say, hey, Max, thanks for your interest in the deep cleaning for your 3-bedroom home. The estimate for your home is going to be X, Y, and Z price. Would you like to get started? So that's how our messaging starts. Or do you have any questions? So in the question part flips, like it depends on, it's like a randomized, it gives a few different variations. Mm-hmm. And naturally what happens is somebody will respond and say, yeah, it sounds good. How about Friday? But the better thing that ends up happening is actually they go, click that, give us the info, go to the book page, and also proceed to booking, which is also something we get quite often. But those who don't book, because we start the conversation via text message, we then keep that conversation going, and eventually leads to them. They say, yeah, this sounds good. How do we proceed? We send them a booking form right in the chat. They click it and book it and go through. So that's our process for, and for those who maybe they text, but we text them, but they didn't respond and they didn't do anything like that. Obviously, they get the automated messages, which is obviously what you guys do a Clean Genie, right? Like, yep. They get that process. So we still have that where they're getting automated messages. And we get a ton of second, third opportunity clients where they inquired in February and September, but the automated messages on the fourth message, they're like, all right. How about Friday, right? And so, but that's the process we go through. So to answer the question of my favorite CTA, I have 3 in there in terms of the actual text that it says, but I kind of have a best of both worlds because I have the contact form where I'm getting your info, but then I'm also pushing you to the pricing. Mm-hmm. And the other one too is I lead with pricing. Most folks will probably say don't do it. The reason I lead by pricing is because you get on the phone with a lead, you're talking, everybody feeling good, how's your kid, we got all that. Then, oh, how much? Oh, it'll be $342. Ooh, my budget was $100. Okay. I'd rather break that from the beginning. And then our system says if you proceed after receiving a text from us that has the pricing, you're interested. You're qualified. That's how we qualify. Here's the pricing. Sounds good? And then from there, there's a bunch of add-ons and stuff that allows us to make more than whatever that initial number that we quoted them.
Okay. I like that process. Yeah. It's kind of like a multi-stage, multi-CTA kind of flow. So we only have about 10 minutes left, so I want to get into what I think most people are probably curious about for what you're doing is, what are your favorite lead gen sources as far as LSA, meta ads, Google PPC? What are you currently doing to generate leads?
Currently, my favorite one now is Google PPC, which after I spent and lost $1,000, I moved on to Meta. And I was a Meta, and Meta was great, and it was better than, to me, LSA, for 2 reasons. One, we weren't relying on phone calls, which means even before I had a full-time VA, I didn't have to be on and be available for this company, because we have other companies we run. My wife and I publish 9 children's books, so we have a children's book company, we have a stock photo company, we have a marketing company. So the goal was to optimize this to be able to run without our constant involvement. So Meta was great. Meta gave us a lot of our recurrings, but our customer acquisition cost for Meta was just about $150 or so. It's a little less than LSA, but we got recurrings, which was great. So in that case, Meta was working well. Then in February of this year, this is very recent, right? We're talking about just a couple months ago. February of this year, I said, okay, I want to give PPC a try again. And so came back to PPC and went about things a little differently. And now we have it where we're not sending them to the booking form, we actually send them to the new process I mentioned to you. So now our PPC, we're getting about $18 to $21 per lead, just about. Sometimes even less. Like some days surprises with like $11 a lead, right? And we close 1 out of every 5, give or take. So 18% is our closing rate, which is 18.93 or something like that. So 1 out of every 5 conversations we have tend to lead to a close. So that's our numbers right there. So that means our customer acquisition cost for PPC is below 100, but our blended CAC or customer acquisition cost is about $78 to $82, something like that. Given like
and that's blended with
whatever.
Okay,
yeah.
Cool.
Exactly. Yeah.
What I love about talking to you is that you actually know your numbers. A lot of people don't know their numbers. It's so important to actually know what your CAC is, how many leads you're getting. A lot of people don't even track how many leads they're getting, their calls per lead. How do you track all of this information?
Yeah, great question. Actually, I built, and I can share this with the audience. I initially built on Google Sheets a scorecard that I have that I basically have my team members fill out every week, and it's a scorecard that's broken down. The top half is just finances, so how much money we made this week, how much expenses, how much we pay cleaners, and how much cash balance available in our bank accounts. Because my team members have access to all of that. Like, my involvement, when I say is minimal, I don't log into my bank account. I haven't logged onto Stripe in probably weeks. So they log in and put the numbers that needs to be, and then I look at a scorecard on a weekly basis, right? So, but that scorecard, it has spaces for how many leads you got, how many closes, how many sales, any refunds. So that's what I created it, and I can like give you the link so you can share with whoever.
That'd be awesome.
And they can download it and implement it in their business. But that's probably the main kind of one source of truth. But I do have a few other places that we use to like keep track of various different things. Like I use Airtable to track some of those leads, make like a little makeshift operating system essentially for the business. But the main place I would say is definitely a scorecard to keep track of those things.
That'd be awesome if you could put that below. I think a lot of people will get value from this. I think we should probably wrap it up, unless there's anything else you want to go over, Jacques?
No, nothing else. I mean, I think if there's anything that's been kind of on my mind right now, just for anybody listening, those who are significantly larger as a business or those who's even smaller, just getting started, just, in these kinds of conversations, you can hear somebody talk and think, man, they really got to figure it out. And this is, what am I doing wrong, right? And, I want to say that not, one, try not to compare your year one or month one to somebody's year 2 or year 17, right? That's the first thing, right? Yeah. Some folks have other competitive advantages and unfair advantages that you may not be able to see, right? Just as a just general rule to give yourself grace in your business, you know what I mean? And also too that, man, everything is hard. Like every business is hard. Every life thing is hard. Like, I don't believe in like grass is greener than the other. I think they're both difficult to maintain, right? If it's greener, you got to maintain it. If it's like, so everything's hard. You just got to pick your hard and just stay consistent with it, which is the most important thing.
Yeah. I would take that even a step farther and say, like, not only don't compare your month 1 to someone's month 12, but don't compare your month 1 to another person's month 1, because you guys aren't in the same market area. You're not maybe not running the same business. Maybe one person has 17 years of business like yourself, experience, trial and error, more capital. Don't compare yourself to anyone. We were talking about this before we even got on the podcast. I think it's super important that like everyone has their own path. And stole this from Hermosi, but you could only lose if you quit. That's the only way you could lose. So like you're 1 year into the business. I mean, you probably weren't profitable for like few months into the game. I mean, I'm not sure exactly, but it's not easy. And you're used to that. You're used to dealing with that because you have a lot of business experience with your other ventures. But for people just starting, don't give up 3 months into the business. Expect it, like the longer you're able to stay in the game without seeing results, to keep playing, to keep being disciplined without seeing any results, you will win. You will outwork other people. You will beat other people. So
well said.
I think that's a great way to end the podcast, and hopefully motivate some people to keep going. But Jacques, this was awesome. We started off a year ago, and I love seeing you killing it. I mean, really came full circle. And we're going to put everything below in the description. This is one of my favorite episodes, Jacques. I'm really happy we got to do this. So
appreciate it.
Thank you for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
Of course. All right. See you, everyone. Peace.